Welcome to the Roller Coaster Ride of Parenting podcast. I'm Jenny.
I'm Ben.
And I'm Susanna. And we'll be your hosts as we discuss the highs and the lows of the parenting journey.
We'll be having conversations based on the content from Susanna's book, A Childcare Expert's Guide to Enjoying Your Parenting. Throughout her time as a childcare owner and operator, Susanna has encountered many overwhelmed parents, and she wrote this book to encourage and equip them to be the best parents they can be.
This podcast is an opportunity to share more tips and tricks around the challenges that parents face. It's our hope that through our shared knowledge, experiences, and conversations, we help you to better embrace your parenting and enjoy your roller coaster ride. So, welcome back to the podcast. Today is part 2 of our 2-episode exploration of identity. This week, we'll focus on our children's identity. We'll be exploring how a child's identity can be influenced and how we as parents can partner with them to discover their own identity. We will be referencing Susanna's book throughout our conversation, and we hope to provide some helpful tips for your parenting journey. I think we almost started talking about this. It was really hard to separate identity from our kids in our last conversation. But Ben, how do you think you've affected your children's self-esteem and identity? Has it been good, bad, ugly?
Good, bad, all three. It's interesting thinking about the way that I've actually impacted the girls' identity, especially having teenagers now. Maddie's 19, Millie's 17, and watching them form their own identities. And they're at that age now, you know, you get in your late teens, your early 20s, and you think you know it all, or you're discovering more of yourself, and that's a good thing. So they're definitely pulling back from Nell and I in ways, which is really healthy, and you want that. But there comes the sass that goes along with I know stuff now. And so it's interesting watching them form their own identities in those ways. But knowing that's a really healthy part, they need to actually pull back from me to find their own space. So I enjoy some of the things that I've helped create well, and I don't enjoy the things that I've helped create poorly. My kids, you know, I've loved being a dad, and I love creating space for the girls to be themselves. And there's definitely times where I've been good at encouraging who they really are, and there's been times if I look back where I've tried to encourage them to be who I want them to be. And I guess as I'm getting older, I'm probably getting better, hopefully, at actually just empowering them to be who they are and who they've been created to be, rather than who I want them to be. A bit deep, quick, didn't it? But I guess that's So a bit of all three. Bit of all three. Yeah. How about for you?
I don't know. I'm just thinking about how different, I think I always say how different our kids are. And it is interesting. I think in some ways, the older they get, and they're 6 and 8, so they're not that old, but their little personalities and the little identities are becoming more and more established. And it's funny that I started seeing little glimpses of that really early. I think that's one of the best gifts as a parent, is that you just start to see who they're going to be in some ways, not who you want them to be, but they kind of shock you and you go, oh, I have a choice here. I remember, I remember it was actually at Little Miracles. Max was in the older class, the 2, 3, 4-year-old, that older class.
Yep.
And then Izzy was just in that first class where they start walking around. I can't remember what it was called, but they're more interacting with their peers.
Stars.
Yeah, the shining stars. And I remember coming from Shining Stars, and when they're the teacher's waiting to talk to you, they're just waiting at the door because they need to tell you something important, and it's never a good conversation when they're waiting to tell you something important. And I was really concerned that because she was a little bit unwell when she was small, and it was her first big year in kindergarten, and I didn't know. We kind of cottonwooled her a little bit.
Yeah.
And I got there and I said, oh, and they normally if they're standing there, they want you to sign an incident report or something's happened. So I was like, did she get hurt? Was she okay? And they went, actually, I was like, what? And they said, she got in a few fights today. And I was like, oh, okay. And I was like, what happened? And she said, well, she beat up 3 little boys. And it wasn't just beat up 3 little boys. So she was 18 months old, and she had got on top of 3 little boys' backs and rubbed their face in the carpet. And then she stood over them and did like a henpeck thing at them and went, yeah, and like walked off. And like when you saw this child, it was like she had like little blonde cherub curls, these big blue eyes. Like she looked like butter would melt in her mouth, but she just had this level of sass.
Wow.
And I remember going, oh my gosh, like I want to melt in the floor that my child just rubbed 3 little boys' faces in the carpet. Like that's extreme. Like I've never. And then I walked away and I was like, okay, we'll talk about it. But I was talking to another mom, like it was a little, well, actually, Susanna and another one of our good friends has often, been the parents that, would be like my mom's age. She said, oh, Jen, there's something about her. Like she was born a fighter. Like she was born, like she probably wouldn't be here if she didn't have that much sass. Like she fought to stay alive and she, like her sass is a gift. Like her strength is a gift. Like outworking it isn't great. Like the way she did that. So we can work on that. But she's like, don't squash that. Like build that. And it was probably one of those because I think in that I had a choice to be really ashamed.
Yeah.
Like that my child had misbehaved and not just misbehaved, but like stood over a child and made a face and like I was like, oh my gosh. But I went, okay, well, yeah, we need to really shape that. And I think that's still like it's probably still the biggest battle with her is her attitude and is her sass. But then I think, I can't. It's really hard to teach confidence. It's really hard to teach that level of strength. Like I can teach her to be kind. Like there's elements of that I can shape it. But in that moment, I just remember having that choice to either squash that and change it or really build on it. And it was so foreign because like that force of nature that is her. So yeah, I don't know. I think, but it was so different than Max. Like Max is, he apologizes for things he didn't do. Like, so it's so interesting seeing both of them.
Yeah.
So I guess it's encouraging that identity that you can already see forming.
Yeah, like
and actually
so
bring out
early.
The positive qualities in that little identity that's forming.
Yeah.
I think so. Or like even recognizing it and seeing the potential in that down the track, like figuring out what to bring out and what to kind of hone, but not changing it.
Yeah.
Totally. I had the exact opposite with my oldest girls. I definitely took on lots of my mum's identity. Beautiful Susanna got in trouble lots at school. I followed suit. Neither of my girls have had a detention yet. Did you ever have a detention, Matt, at school? One, she says. Wrong socks. What wrong socks? My brother Mick put his tongue in the principal's ear. That was one of the things he got in trouble for. Like that's more my family.
Maybe this is why I feel comfortable around the Batemans. Like McGee fit in,
but not Daniel and Anna.
Not Daniel and Anna, but like I did. I got in trouble a fair bit, and I've waited, and now Millie's school captain, so she's really not going to get in trouble. Yeah. The girls, so I've had to embrace their goody two shoes identity and be proud of them in that. Like proud of their grades and. Mad's studying to be a lawyer and, Mila will do something cool too. And I muck around. Obviously, I'm super proud of the things I've done, but it was weird. I kept waiting for them to muck up. And then I'm like, all right, Tilly, you're my last hope, baby. And now, we've taken her out of school, but
why did you take her out of school? Not because she mucked up.
No, not because she mucked up. No, Tilly's actually on the autism spectrum. She's also dyslexic like me, and she has ADHD. And those 3 things combined in a sweet little 10-year-old doesn't make for a great learning experience. So, yeah, we're actually homeschooling her, which is a massive shock to us. Something we didn't ever expect to do. We're on a pretty cool, crazy journey with that. But with Tilly, I definitely get more of the cheekiness and stuff that I was kind of expecting with the girls. And it's funny, like watching Mad or Millie be cheeky in different ways. Like Millie lately has this thing where she loves to scare me because I love scaring her, like going down to her room when she's like watching Netflix and getting down low so I can get up right up close to her bed, jump up and scream in her face and her freak the heck out. Like I appreciate that. So she's been trying to find ways to scare me too and find that cheekiness, but actually finding ways to bring out your kid's identity, like it's such a beautiful thing. It's kind of like a discovery. Like each child is different, and trying to discover what makes them unique, what makes them tick. I'm still discovering what makes my girls tick. And as they get older, there's different things that they apply themselves to. And so like Mad's working here at LM right now, and that's something that's been a real joy seeing her, like, 'cause she's so creative with writing, again, something so different to me. Dyslexia, I'm not the greatest at spelling, let alone writing an essay, whereas Mad's is so natural at that. So it's been such a journey to discover and to celebrate identity, I guess, for me. What about for you, Susanna? What's something you did to help discover or to nurture your kids' identities, do you think?
Well, I think I was always aware that everybody has their own strengths. Everybody has their own giftings. I was, always aware of that. And so I deliberately looked for what you children were good at. So for yourself, bodyboarding, and then I would do everything I can to encourage you and help you with that, which was always a cost involved in that. It meant many mornings of getting up first thing in the morning to take you to the surf, drop you off there, and then come back later and pick you up. And pick your mates up as well. Often pick your mates up, and you go to one beach and the waves weren't quite right, so we'd have to go to another beach until we found the beach that had the right waves. So, but I always saw that as an investment into you children, and saw it as an investment into your identity, and therefore an investment into you understanding who you are. With Daniel, he went through a stage where he was really struggling, just understanding who he was. And just around about that time, I think he was in year 5, his teacher at school told me he was really good at drama, and I had no idea he was, because he was actually very shy. And so when I found out he was good at acting, then we found somebody who was really good at teaching acting. Again, that meant that of a Saturday morning, I used to have to drive an hour and a half down to Sydney to take him to his acting classes, then hang around and wait for 2 hours and then turn around and drive him back. But it was all worth it, because it really helped him understand who he was. It built his confidence up. He went from somebody who really didn't know what his gifts were, I guess, to really understand that. Funnily enough, he hasn't gone on and used it. But at that point in time, doing that for him for that period of time really built his confidence up and helped him understand who he was. Michael was soccer. Anna was basically learning how she was just really good with also, I think she picked up a lot from her mum, but she was really good at encouraging people younger than herself. And so she spent a lot of time encouraging children. She was always good with children, which made absolute sense as to why she went into early childhood. And so it was just a matter of deliberately looking at what are they good at, because there's always things that children can't do. And I guess with the 4 of you being dyslexic, it was an even bigger challenge. It was even more important to find out what were you good at. So it's a matter of stopping and looking and spending time with the children, talking to them, and then showing them how everybody has certain gifts, and that they're part of life. I always found it important to tell you children that nobody can be you except for you. And I believe that we're all put on the planet Earth to be us, and we've all got an important role. And so if you don't learn who you are, if you don't learn your identity, then the world's missing out. So it's not just you. I actually have a saying in my house where it says, just be you and set the world on fire. And that's, I think, really important for us to really help our children see that when they are who they were built to be, whatever that looks like, it might be completely different to what we thought it should look like. A bit like what you were saying with Izzy with her sass. She needs to develop that sass because she's built for that sass. She's going to do amazing things with that sass as she gets older. But she obviously needs encouraging to use it in the right way, which you are doing and she's learning to do. And I'm sure she wouldn't get on top of a little boy now at this age. But it's a matter of us as parents. It's very much our responsibility as parents to be looking and understanding that there's an identity in this child that is specifically for that child. It's unique. We are all unique and might look a bit similar. One of the mistakes I did make around the identity was I would often say how much one child was like a family member. Mm-hmm. And sometimes if we're not careful, that can almost help them lose their identity because they think they're so much like the other person that they've lost their own uniqueness in their identity. And yes, there can be similarities, and there always will be similarities between them and other family members, but we still need to help them find their uniqueness within that. Now, the trick is that sometimes, and it's only natural, there'll be qualities that, say, one of our children might have that our spouse or that our father or that some relative has, that can be a little bit annoying to us. And if we're not careful, we'll talk about the things that are like those people that are annoying us, and we'll speak about it in a negative way instead of really helping them draw that out. Like you could talk about Izzy with her sassiness in a negative way, or you can talk about it in a positive way and bring the good out in it. And so that's what we have to be careful of as well, that we really see their uniqueness as a positive thing, and then we build around that and help them understand that the world needs them to be them, not to be anybody else.
There's a chapter in your book that is called "As a Person Thinks, So He or She Is."
Yeah.
I think that's kind of a really interesting, like there's a lot of the different kind of tips that you give us in the book around how we actually build that kind of worldview and that view of themselves into our kids. I don't know, like I think because my kids are so young still. Do you guys have, like, I love the practical examples of how you do that, like how you can practically, like in your everyday, you know, because it's kind of, sometimes I go, oh, like I want to do that, but then at like push comes to shove and I'm making dinner and like being intentional with that. Like, how do you guys do that?
For me, it's been trying to celebrate what the girls celebrate or take joy in what they take joy in.
Yeah.
So I never was into dancing at all, but my little girls are right into dancing and going to dance concerts and going to dance practice. And I would never watch dance by myself, but when they were dancing, what I would enjoy about it was the joy they were getting out of it. And as I leaned into that, I could really celebrate with them what they were celebrating. Does that make sense? Like actually, really enjoy what they're enjoying. And I still do it today. I've been playing Monopoly with Tilly in isolation, and often we've got to play it one-on-one because nobody else wants to play with us with that. And it's boring, like playing one-on-one. And she always wins, which I hate as well. But she really enjoys it. And so for an hour, I can do that. I can actually choose to validate something that she's really enjoying. And so validate her. She's so valuable that I'm going to give some of my time to something that she really enjoys. And so looking for those things. For Millie, it's being her roadie and taking her when she goes, she busks. And so I really delight in taking those times and watching her. I like music. My wife loves music and Millie loves music. But when I'm with Millie, I try to really embrace her love of it and try to go deeper into that. So it's trying to really see what they're seeing. And then for Matt and I, like Maddie started taking up skateboarding, like riding longboard skaties when she was like 7 or 8, which was something I already did. And then Millie took it up and Tilly's done a little bit, but I don't think we've skated much in the last 18 months. And I've grieved that because the girls don't do it much anymore, but let it go. Not try to hold on and go, well, that's the thing we do together, guys. Come on. I don't care how old you are or what you want to do. We need to go skating more. But to go, okay, what's the next thing that I can move on to with the girls? Like what are they enjoying now? Whether that's watching a TikTok video with them, or for Maddie and I, we both love Marvel movies. So we take out time to watch that sort of stuff. But even if I don't feel like it in that moment, I'll watch a Marvel movie with Mad because that's something that we have together. I know when I read stuff about Marvel, I'll go and talk to her about it, knowing that's going to bring joy to her. So I've tried to really look for what are the girls into? How do I invest into what they are identifying with at that time? I don't know. Does that make sense at all?
Yeah, I was like, as you were talking, I was just thinking about like I work in HR, and we're often talking about like performance and, you know, figuring out like what people are great at in the workplace. But one of the things we often talk about is like, you know, if you have a yearly performance review and you say, oh, you're great at this, this, and this, it's often not as meaningful, like when you're just saying, oh, like you're a great communicator and you're, you know, it's like almost cliche.
Yeah.
And I often think, oh, that's kind of the same with parenting, because you often say, okay, catch people when they're doing something great.
Yeah.
Like, so be really intentional about watching. So like when someone's really great at communicating in that space, bring it up. And I was just thinking about over the past probably since we've moved into our new house, so we've moved into a new community, and it's very big, like it's a real like a village. But Max has been coming up with lots of business ideas. So most weekends he'll have like a little stand out the front, and he's been really thinking about it.
Okay.
So he's done lemonade, he's done bake sales, he's done toy sales, like, and then they were really popular to start with. And then they kind of slacked off. Like people got tired of paying for, you know, the exact same thing every weekend. But it was really funny because he just loved it. And he kept coming back in, and he was like, okay, so I need to think about like how much I need to sell my coffee for, because milk costs so much and this. So we'd go to the shop and get his supplies. And I remember saying to him, I was like, oh, you know, you're really good at this. And I remember telling him, like, okay, well, taking the time, taking him to the shop, adding up the money, seeing how much profit he was going to get. And I think it was one of those things where it was just like his mind was really geared for that.
Yeah.
And I think it was a little bit time intensive, and it really did get a little bit of annoying after a while, like after a couple of weekends, but just picking and saying, oh, you know what? That was a really great idea. Like, I think you can make a lot of money this weekend. And I remember like his little shoulders going back. Like he was like, oh. And actually the funniest thing was he came up with a master idea to get there's like 5 little girls in the neighborhood that all play together. And he's like, they're going to be my staff. I'm going to pay them to go out and like take coffee orders. And then he sat down and he thought about it for a little while, and he came back and he went, if I pay them, I'm not going to make any profit this weekend. So I am only going to hire one person. And I said to him, I'm like, like that was really clever. And the more we talked about it, you could see that he was learning things, and the feedback was really helpful.
He's a little entrepreneur.
Yeah, a little entrepreneur. But yeah, it was one of those things where I just went, oh, like it's something he's super engaged with, and not necessarily doing it for him, but like I charged him for the milk. I was like, hand over $4, kid. Like, you know, so kind of not making it easy, but really encouraging.
That's awesome, Jen.
Yeah, so I don't know. It's one of those things where it is really fun to see the stuff they start excelling at.
Yeah.
And I think the thing is too, though, just like in everything else, we're not always going to do it perfectly. And there'll be times that we miss the mark, but it's when we're overall doing that. When overall we can see the value of their identity and them having a strong self-identity, and us deliberately doing things like that to help them understand their identity and add value to their identity and be confident in that, then overall they get it. But we're not always going to hit the mark every time, and that's okay. We don't have to hammer ourselves over the head with that. It's the majority of the time. It's what happens the majority of the time, not the whole time. You know, because I know we've done things over the years, even like you're saying with Max being a little entrepreneur. With that, years ago, we were in Bali, the first time we ever went to Bali, and I think Daniel was 12 at the time, and he worked out that you could buy furniture and get it to come and ship it back, and then he wanted to sell it. So we did that with him. But there's other times I'm sure that we missed the mark with Daniel, or we missed the mark with somebody. But overall, they've all got a strong identity. They all know who they are. and they all have that confidence in it. So I just want to encourage parents that all these things that we're talking about are great, but they didn't happen 24/7. Every day of the children's life, there's sometimes we miss the mark, and sometimes you guys will miss the mark, but it's the overall. So, be encouraged in that.
Because I think, like if I go back to I was talking about earlier, I think sometimes in the areas where I was naturally talented or interested, it was easy to encourage kids in their identity. In the things that I wasn't natural at or was as interested in, it was a lot more challenging, and not to feel bad about that, but just to go along with it. Like for me, parenting is giving it my best shot. We muck around telling the girls that some stage we'll give them like a $5,000 counselling voucher to go work out their stuff. And we've been saying that since they were like teenagers. But I think in some ways it's recognizing that I'm not the perfect parent. I can't be. I'm giving it my best shot. Sometimes I'm pretty good at it. Sometimes I'm okay. And sometimes I actually do some dumb stuff as a parent. And that's actually okay. Like I can only put my best foot forward, and knowing that I'm imperfect, but trying my best to love my kids anyway.
I always tell Max and Iz, I'm like, you're my practice kids. Like, you're the first kids I've ever had, so you're my practice. By the time I'm a grandparent, I'm going to nail this. So by the time you guys have kids, I'll give you some great advice. But right now, I'm just working this out.
Yeah.
The grandchildren will be different again, though, Jen.
Be like, you're my practice grandkids.
Yeah.
I was thinking when we were talking before, one of the things that really deeply shaped my identity was when I was like 16 and wanted to get my ear pierced.
Oh, yeah.
And you fully were like, I went to you and talked about it and stuff. And like with Dad at work, it was not going to be a good look if he had this son with the ear pierced.
We did not like the idea. We actually hated the idea, to be honest.
Yeah, it wasn't something you were very keen on.
No, not at all.
I remember talking it through with you, and I was like, they're never going to let me have this. But then like a week or two later, because it wasn't just that, like at church, it wouldn't have been a good look for you guys either. But then you came
back in the day.
Back in the day, yeah, 30 years ago. But going back to you and you came back to me and said, look, we've thought about it, and this isn't going to look good for us, but we really don't think it's going to be negative for you, so we're going to let you do it. And I went, whoa, plenty of freaks from. Like it really took me back that you were willing to do something sacrificial for me, that you were actually willing to take a hit for me. And it's always stuck with me. And I guess I think that's part of being a parent, that sometimes putting your child first. And we're not always have these amazing opportunities to show our child that I'm putting you first, sweetie. But it's that attitude. And I guess I kind of always knew that. And that was a big part of my identity, that I was deeply valued, that I was valuable enough that you would actually put me first at times. And that's not always the case. Like I knew that you guys as a couple always put yourselves before us. Like you actually really valued your relationship in a way that was really sacred, and you wouldn't actually sacrifice your relationship in a way that put us first all the time. Like I would see some of my mates and their mum would always like put them before their dad. I knew that wasn't the case, that you always really valued Dad, but that there were times where you would both really sacrifice for us. And that sacrifice is such a big word. It's not an easy one, but it's such a powerful one. I don't know. Have you seen anything like that in your parents, or is there a way that you try to do that for your kids, Jen?
Yeah, I think it's like the everyday, like just having children. It's not, I can't think of any grandiose moment when I felt really so self-sacrificial, but I think it is just those really intentional day-to-day, like, the every day we do dinner and every day we do bath and we have to like wash the clothes, and there's just the daily life stuff that's happening, and those daily interactions with the kids. Like I feel like that's probably where I don't get it right. Like I'm busy and I don't get it right, but then I think there's moments where I'm like, you just take in a deep breath in the midst of the chaos and the busyness, and you like look them in the eyes. And like we've been doing that often with Iz at the moment, because she wants to learn to cook. Like she's really excited about cooking dinner. Yeah. And actually even this week, she's like, you know what? You've taught me a lot. I'm ready. I've got this. I'm going to do all of dinner. I was like, we have gas cooking, like that's not great, but she's like, no, I can do this. You can help me. And I said, okay, well, you know what? Let's try that. So she chopped every single thing. I was standing there and she was like, stand back. I've got this. She's like, I'm not going to lean too close to the fire. I'm not going to lean too far back. I've got this. But the whole way through I actually went, and you could see, like initially she didn't think I was going to say yes. And I was close enough that I knew she was safe. But it was one of those things that I was like, man, this is like in the moment, that was really self-sacrificial because it took an hour and a half to make dinner versus 30 minutes.
Yeah.
But at the end, like I was like, okay, I'm going to, like once we had it all done, I was like, I'm going to go put my jammies on. And I could see she sat at the table and she rang the dinner bell and she's like, okay, people, thank you, Jesus, for me cooking this. And I hope you all enjoy it. And her little shoulders were back.
Wow.
And she was so proud of herself.
Yeah.
And it was kind of one of those, and like, it's not anything massive, but it was a massive thing for her.
Yeah, it actually is massive. Yeah. But the reality is any relationship has a form of sacrifice in it. If it doesn't, it's not a healthy relationship. So whether we be parents, whether we be daughters, sons, whatever, whether we be in a marriage relationship or in a relationship with a partner, there has to be sacrifice in it there, or else it's a very unhealthy relationship. So to not expect parenting to be sacrificial is not a wise thing. You're going to find out sooner or later either you have to sacrifice time and all sorts of stuff, or it's just not going to work. It won't work. You won't have a healthy relationship. Your child won't have a healthy identity. But again, if you yourself as a parent has a healthy identity, if you have one, then you will be willing to put the sacrifice in. If you're not willing to put the sacrifice in, the chances are you don't have a healthy identity of yourself.
I think one of the keys to being a parent is not expecting to be appreciated in the moment.
Yeah.
But actually choosing to sacrifice anyway. Like I heard you, that example you just gave it easy, but I also heard you sacrifice when you're talking about earlier with Max that, you got a bit over it, but you still went through with it in terms of him doing the business. It's those little sacrifices. And as an adult, I sat back and went, whoa, my parents did so much for me.
Yeah.
But that wasn't a revelation until my mid-20s.
Yeah.
And then in my mid-30s, I thought, whoa, they did so much for me, because then as a parent, I realized what happened. But so I try to hold that and go, don't expect the girls to realize what I'm doing for them, but just do it because they're worth it and they're valuable and do it anyway. So, Susanna, what encouragement would you give to me as like now in my 40s with my kids? What would you say to me about how can I actually really continue to sow into my kids and their identity?
I think just do what you do, in the sense that you already do go out of your way to find out what your children are interested in, what do they value, and then you deliberately spend time with them in that activity, whatever it is. And you do speak life into your children. You let them know that they are unique. You let them know that that they have an amazing identity in who they are, and you let them know that their identity is important and that their identity is going to make a difference to society. So I think just keep doing the more you're doing, and continue to realize that you're not going to get it perfect, but it'll be good. And definitely, I don't think there's a person on the planet. I'm the same. I didn't really understand and appreciate what my parents did for me until I was older either. So that's just natural.
Totally. I just want to honour you, Jen. Like I think you're quite an amazing mum when it comes to actually picking up on what your kids do.
Aww.
Like even the way that on Facebook you often talk about the things you've noticed in your kids that day, or like you've really worked hard at noticing and appreciating your kids. That's actually one of the things I really value about your parenting.
Oh,
and I
thanks,
just really wanted to honour you in that way today. I was just thinking about going, like, I think this is an area of parenting. We all have our strengths. And I think this is one of your strengths, is acknowledging and empowering people that way. So, yeah, it actually encourages me. So thank you for that.
Thanks, Ben. That's lovely.
No worries.
Yeah, it is funny, things that you do really naturally. You do sometimes devalue them. Like, when you go, oh, like that's just the everyday thing. So like that's really encouraging to hear.
No, my pleasure.
Mm.
It's cool.
Well, I've really enjoyed this conversation. Like, I think it's a really, like, the two conversations together around identity and around, like, helping build your children's identity is a really beautiful concept. And I think it resonates with a lot of parents. So thanks for being a part of the conversation today.
No worries.
Next episode, we're going to talk about making memories and creating fun with your children. So I know that's something that I've loved to watch how you guys do with the big family holidays and all the just really intentional fun. So I think that'll be something really fun to look forward to next time.
Totally.
But yeah, so thank you for the conversation today, and remember to enjoy your roller coaster ride.